Frankly, I was deeply unimpressed by both of them, which is sort of surprising, given that Trump, okay, he's getting on a bit, but he's what you would call him, semi-professional TV performer, certainly very, very experienced TV performer. And of course, Harris is a trained lawyer as well as a politician who apparently was preparing for this debate for an entire week with advisors and I don't know, coaches and all the rest of it. So the thing began with the question from the moderators. Let me quote it. Are you better off than 4 years ago? This was a question directed at Harris. And I was amazed because she didn't answer the question. Now, it's true, I suppose, in politics that, come from your strong point, don't emphasize your weak point, but she didn't answer it. And I don't know what the agreement was, but certainly if I was a moderator under those circumstances, I might be tempted to, when she'd finished, to say the question was on, are you better off, uh, 4 years ago? And you didn't answer that. But hey, and then what was interesting to me is not only did the moderator not ask that question, which maybe that was the agreement, that they weren't allowed to intervene in that way because it would come over as partisan. But then Trump didn't seize on that point and, go for the jugular. Instead, what they were both doing is, how should we put it, playing to a script that they'd been given and, almost sort of banged into their heads. So Trump's response to it was to talk about migrants. And I think the moderator came in at some point and said, we will be talking about that. But that was his script. It was migrants, 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 including, yes, the wonderful passage. Was it Spring somewhere or other? Anyway, I'll call it, Smallsville, in honor of Superman. But apparently in Smallsville, the migrants had come in and started eating the cats and the dogs and all the rest of it. It was an appalling debate. What was Harris doing meanwhile? She was going on about her values. So the fact that she's changed her political position on almost everything, since she last had a bid for presidency, that time, of course, against Joe Biden. No, what she wanted to emphasize is that she was from an ordinary middle class background and how mum did this and mum did that, or whatever the hell it was. So yeah, as a piece of TV, as a piece of entertainment, as a piece of, how should I put it, political information, I found it extraordinarily vacuous. So not only did we have Harris apparently, approving of migrants who eat cats and dogs, apparently she's a Marxist. Well, I sort of wish she was. Apparently it's her father, but presumably, like father, like daughter. That seemed to be the implication. Either way, what hit me is, unlike Trump versus Hillary Clinton or Trump versus Biden, he didn't really have any killer points. As I said, he was sort of pre-programmed on the migrant question, and that was the only thing really he could say. And Harris, didn't rise to the debate. She'd obviously practiced her various looks of astoundedness, like how extreme or stuff like that. And she was trained to, as I should be doing, look straight in the camera. She was doing an awful lot of that. So she'd clearly been coached on that. But it was, as I say, overall, is it 1.5 hours or something like that? Whatever time it took, it was pretty poor. It wasn't really a debate. It was a pre-programmed performance. And maybe in terms of core voters, the message was that Donald Trump is an extremist. How dare you talk about migrants being criminal? Look at you, sort of type message. And on the other side, it was Kamala Harris is pro-migrant and a Marxist or something along those lines. Now, of course, as we all know, anyone who knows anything about American politics, and you don't have to know very much, we all know that it's going to be decided in six states. Why? Because we're dealing with an electoral college, and the electoral college is elected via states. So we're not dealing with a popular vote. It's not been unknown. In fact, it's a known that many a president, not least in recent years, has been elected on a minority vote. So, for example, one Donald J. Trump minority vote. What are the states? Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. Now, of course, what matters is how it went down there. And according to the pollsters, you've got, roughly speaking, in those states, it's been about 50-50 or 49-51. It's that sort of type stuff. So Trump will be ahead in one or two of them. Harris will be clearly ahead in another one or two of them. And the other one will be dead tied. It's that sort of type stuff. Well, given the aftermath of this debate, I don't know what the audience was, other than I would expect it to have been large. What we have is evidence of Harris pulling ahead in these states. Now, as I said, they matter. One would expect, given the sort of distribution of populations in states, for the Democrat candidate to get more votes than the Republican, but the Republican could collect the swing states. Well, it looks like, at least as we're here at the moment, that Harris has edged ahead. So that's worth noting. Now, of course, we don't know until we know. We won't know until November who actually wins. But you'll be very foolish, I think, to actually dismiss polls. And indeed, that both the Republican side and the Democrat side will be piling in enormous resources and analyzing those results, which a particular group to target with which particular message. Is it men? Is it women? For example, Harris clearly hit home when it came to women with Trump's stance on abortion, basically leave it to states, and his claim, which was squashed by one of the moderators, that in this or that state, Democrat governors are allowing abortion to post-born babies. Well, as they pointed out, that's illegal. It's called murder. That's not abortion. Either way, you'd certainly expect on the basis of that debate for Harris certainly to gain traction amongst female voters. How the migrant message goes down in each of these states, I don't know. I suspect it would vary from state to state, given the number of migrants and all sorts of other factors. Either way, I do think it's just worthwhile commenting on the nature of American democracy. Now, certainly in the 18th century, right into the 19th century, it's worth recalling that in terms of European bourgeois and aristocratic circles, the word Democrat was an insult. It was equivalent of saying anarchist today, or mob, um, or Marxist, I suppose, in America, or it used to be in America at least. The word socialist. This was an insult word. And it was only actually, of course, with the progress of Marxist parties, not accidentally called social democrats, i.e., championing the right of everyone, men and women, to vote, i.e., universal suffrage, did the bourgeoisie start to change their discourse. And so you had an Americanization in that sense of the word being adopted by the establishment. And of course, what happened with the Russian Revolution, certainly when the Russian Revolution starts to retreat and Soviet elections become, how should we put it, increasingly bogus, and you have, Trotsky writing surely his worst book, Terrorism and Communism, of where, he's mocking the idea of democracy and is putting the dictatorship of the proletariat above democracy. Basically, we handed the bourgeoisie a gift. And certainly after the Russian Revolution, or soon after the Russian Revolution, the bourgeoisie started to dress itself in the garb of democracy. Now, we've always, and I say we, I'm talking about the CPGB Provisional Central Committee, we've always questioned the democratic credentials of the bourgeoisie. I don't think it's a democratic class. All you need to do to find out how democratic the bourgeoisie is go to work. When was the last time the boss turned around and said, well, let's have an election, let's have a debate about what we do next? No, in the workplace, the bourgeoisie act as dictators. And when it comes to so-called democracy, what we have is the least democracy that they can get away with. So there's all sorts of checks and balances against democracy in bourgeois constitutions. So, for example, in Britain, we have the monarchy, which isn't just some feudal relic, some figurehead. It is one of the checks against democracy that could be brought into play under extraordinary circumstances. The same applies, of course, with the House of Lords, whether that includes hereditary lords or simply appointed lords. That's what it's there for. And if that stuff fails, then you've got the army, then you've got the secret state. And it's the same in the United States, that what you have is a presidency, a sort of elected monarch, but also what you have in the United States is state rights, but also a Supreme Court. So there's all sorts of checks and balances to stop any democratic breakthrough from below. That's what it's about. So state rights, for example, you just look at the size of states, you look at the population of states. It's very convenient for the Republicans, it's very convenient for the right that an awful lot of small states tend to vote right, where the big states like New York and California tend to vote more left. Either way, from our angle, the democratic revolution in the United States is yet to happen. And that's true in Britain, and it's true in every capitalist country. We don't have the rule of the majority. We have the rule of a minority that sometimes gets the consent of the majority. Usually, though, what you get is low turnouts. What you get is a switching off from politics. Either way, we don't dismiss that space. We don't take the view of the anarchists of what is the point of voting, it don't change anything. Or to use a phrase, if voting changed anything, they would abolish it. Well, indeed, that's true. But we can use the vote in order to organize a party, in order to organize an opposition, in order to legitimize our revolution in the eyes of the masses. And it's just worthwhile pointing out, I think, that if you look at the Bolshevik Party in terms of the October Revolution, so the story goes, and I'm prepared to believe it unless someone tells me it's just a story, that Trotsky persuaded Lenin, and Lenin, I don't know, presumably persuaded the Central Committee to go for the uprising in the midst of the Congress of Soviets, both the workers and soldiers Soviets, but also the peasant Soviets, because they thought that they would secure a majority. They knew that they would secure a majority in the workers and soldiers Soviets. That was a foregone conclusion. They knew that. But what they wanted is a display of their majority in the peasant Soviets, which of course relied on the split in the Socialist Revolutionary Party. So you had the formation of the left Socialist Revolutionary Party and the right Socialist Revolutionary Party, and it was left Socialist Revolutionary votes plus a few Bolshevik votes that gave them their majority. So when it comes, for example, to Westminster, we're definitely in favor of standing in elections, and that also applies to the United States. I think, I'm not sure of the date, but I think it was shortly before Engels's death, some comrades in the United States wrote to Engels and says, should we stand in the presidential elections? And I think his answer was revealing, and that was, yes, you should, but you should stand on the basis that if you win, you're committed to abolishing the post of president. And I think it was in that letter that Engels also made his view known about how perhaps the state system in the United States was antiquated. It was time to sweep the state system away. And I think he also said in passing that federalism in Britain, in Great Britain, and he was clearly thinking of Britain and Ireland, that would be a step forward. But in the United States, it surely had its time. Well, if that was true over 100 years ago, it's most certainly doubly true today in 2024. So what to do in November? I don't know. I sort of find myself in a position where I understand the advice, however you interpret it, of Pope Francis, of where he says, vote for the lesser evil. I presume that's a sort of hint and a nod to Catholic voters in the United States to vote Harris. On the other hand, I'm not sure, simply because of the question I've already mentioned, abortion. I don't know. Either way, the question is there for the left, and that is the necessity to break the working class and the left to begin with from choosing the lesser of two evils. So I understand that approach. I understand the dilemma that comrades are faced with in the United States. Nevertheless, at some point, that break has to happen. And all I can say is, however difficult that break is, the sooner that break happens, the better.